dim view of its government. So let's go straight to the source. One of the Republicans who came to Washington promising to change the culture of this town is Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator Paul, we've averted a shutdown for tonight. But how much does this weigh on you? I know you came here saying we're not going to spend any more money. We don't have any more money to spend. How much does it weigh when you see the American people look at Washington, and this is my term, not theirs, they essentially see a daycare center?
Well, I'm sort of perplexed because, you know, the Democrats held this up because they said we don't want to offset the spending. In other words, the Democrats are insisting that we borrow the money for FEMA. And I don't think anybody in America thinks that we can perpetuate these debts and continue these annual deficits in the trillions of dollars. So I think most people say, well, gosh, why couldn't we cut duplicate spending? Or why couldn't we cut some foreign aid or foreign welfare that we're sending? So I think really the American people are ready for us to offset what we're doing and have cuts and not just add to the debt.
I think on the big question of that, you're absolutely right. Most public opinion polls have shown people are very upset about the deficit. They want it dealt with. But I just want to show another graphic to our viewers. I want to take this one down and talk about what we were talking about in the sense of this FEMA fight. About $3.5 billion, $3.65 billion. This is the entire United States federal budget up here. You see where most of the money goes. Discretionary security spending, discretionary non-security, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, other mandatory programs. FEMA. How much does FEMA? Look at that tiny slice. This was a huge fight. Senator Paul, you were willing, if it came to it, to have the United States government shut down over this tiny little sliver. Is that principle that important to you?
Well, what I would say is it's sort of the opposite. The Democrats are willing to shut down government if we don't borrow that tiny amount of money. But the thing about it is every program up here, you can say it's only a tiny amount of money. But, you know, if you can't cut $100 million here or you can't offset $3 billion there, we're never going to balance a $1.5 trillion deficit. So really, you do have to look at even small amounts. And it should be a priority. Should we be spending this money overseas in foreign aid or foreign welfare? Or should we be building our bridges here in our country? And it's something I actually agreed with the president. I got to ride on the Air Force One with him recently, and he's mentioned that. We have to be concerned with our country's needs as a priority right now.
How much does this come up in the Republican conference, especially with members who are on the ballot next year? And I asked the question in the context of this. We have a new CNN ORC poll out tonight. And now, again, tonight we can tell our viewers the breaking news is a government shutdown has been averted. But with that possibility, Senator, we asked them, if the government shut down, who would you blame? Republicans in Congress, 47%. President Obama, 33%. Are there jitters in the Republican ranks that the image of the party is taking a hit in the middle of all this?
Well, I think you could also poll and ask people whether or not they think that we should add more debt or whether we should offset debt. You know, it's not whether we should shut it down. I'm not in favor of shutting it down either. I think we should pass appropriation bills like we used to. We should have a budget. American people are upset because we keep bumping up against deadlines. It sort of looks like poor planning, or it looks like a circus up here because we always bump up against deadlines. But I can tell you, I'm up here day after day not voting, sitting around, having no debate, and then the deadline comes and it's hurry up or the government shuts down. How come we didn't have this debate last week or the week before or the week before that? Everything comes to a deadline, I think, because of poor leadership and poor planning in this place.
I don't think I would disagree with you on that point, and I think that can be at times a bipartisan disease. I'm not pointing at any one side. One of your Republican colleagues, Scott Brown, said this today: the gridlock and partisanship in Washington right now is disgusting. With economic instability in the United States and around the world, it's unacceptable for Congress to add more uncertainty to the marketplace by threatening another government shutdown. Now, Senator Brown's up for re-election next year. He's up for re-election in a tough state for a Republican, so maybe that's a little bit about his re-election campaign as well. But we've already seen the United States credit rating downgraded. You saw the poll numbers I just showed you. I understand your point, Senator. Is there any effort to get the Republicans and the Democrats in a room to say, let's get back to passing a real budget? Let's get back to looking like we can figure out what the hell we're doing here?
Well, many of us on the Republican side have been pointing out it's been over 900 days since the Senate has had a budget, so we are pushing to go through the process in the normal fashion. But I think people also are alarmed when you talk about uncertainty in the marketplace. I'm very alarmed when I read the news coming out of Europe. But that has nothing to do with them having too much debate over there or too much gridlock. It has to do with them having too much debt. That's our problem. We are following on the heels of Europe because we have an enormous amount of debt. And I agree with Admiral Mullen when he says it's the #1 threat to our national security is our debt. So we've got to offset debt every time. Every time we have a new spending program, it's got to be offset by cuts in other places. And that's the only responsible way for a legislator to act, is to prioritize spending. For example, on the highway fund, were you giving money to turtle tunnels, squirrel sanctuaries, and flower beds, and our bridges are crumbling? That's what I asked the president. Can we not fix our bridges and put off some of these beautification projects for a while? I think that's a bipartisan way of looking at it, and I'm more than willing to work with the president on that.
Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, appreciate your time tonight, and I hope maybe by the time this super committee gets about its business, we can have a little bit more of an adult conversation. We'll keep in touch with you as that plays out.